So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the Higher Practice Paper 2023 Set 1 Paper 3, which is a calculated paper. And as always, I'll include a question breakdown so you can see which question refers to which topic to make it easier for you to revise or review any mistakes. So the first question says the ratio of x to y is 3 to 4 and what is the fraction of y is x. So for this question what we need to do is we need to convert this ratio into an equation and make x the subject. So here to convert the ratio what we need to do is write these two things as fractions, so that then becomes x over y equals 3 over 4. Then if I do a bit of cross multiplying I get 4x equals 3y, and then making x the subject I get x equals 3 over 4y. So the answer I'm looking for is going to be 3/4. Then moving on to question 2, it says the probability that a biased coin lands on a head is 2/5. The coin is spun twice, work out the probability of 2 heads. So for this what we need to do is we need to do 2/5 and means times. So 2/5 times 2/5, which is 4 over 25. So I can write my answer either as a fraction or I can write it as a decimal, which is 0.16. So any of those two would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 3, it says work out the next term of this quadratic sequence. Now with quadratic sequence you have a double difference, which is the same. So if I work out the difference between these I get +1, +3, +5, and then from here you might be able to spot a pattern that they're going up by the next odd number. So this difference here is going to be +7, and 14 plus 7 is 21, so the answer is going to be 21. Now because it is a quadratic it basically means that the double difference should be the same, and as you can see it's +2, so 5 plus 2 is 7, so that's what the difference is going to be. We can go that way, but if you just wrote 1, 3, 5 and 7, that should be enough to get you your method mark. Moving on to question 4, it says circle the inequalities shown in the diagram, and the correct answer you should have highlighted is going to be our third option. So we're just going to put a little circle around that. For question 5 it says factorise fully 10a squared plus 25a. So taking the biggest factor of 10 and 25, which is 5, the smallest power of a, which is just a, and then just going to think of 5 times what gives you 10, that's going to be 2. I've got a but I want a squared, so I need another a, and then move on to the next term. 5 times what gives me 25, which is 5. I've got 1a and I need 1a, so that's fine. So there is my final answer. Moving on to question 6, it says in a school 60% of students are senior, 45% of the seniors have school meals, 75% of the juniors have school meals. What percentage of the students, seniors and juniors, have school meals? So for this let's just break out the two sections. So we've got seniors, and what this is going to be 45% of 60%. So it's 45% of 60%. So it's going to be 0.45 times 60, because we're looking at the percentage, and that gives me 27%. Then if we look at the juniors, well, we're looking for 75% of 40%. So that's going to be 75% of 40%, which is 0.75 times 40, which gives me an answer of 30%. And then all I've got to do is just simply add those two percentages up, and I get an answer of 57%. Then moving on to question 7, it says the diagram shows a square. Work out the length of one side of the square. Now in a square the two sides are going to be equal, so that means that these two expressions here must be equal to each other. So I've got 8x minus 5 equals 4x plus 6. Now I need to solve this to try and find the value of x, so I expand the brackets, in which I get 4x plus 24. Take the 4x over to the other side, we'll take away 4x from both sides, and then take the 5 over, so I end up with 4x equals 29. So x equals 29 over 4, which gives me 7.25. Now I've not quite finished the question, because the question is not asking me to find out x, it's asking me to find the length of one of the squares. So if I take the easy expression, I'm going to take 8x minus 5. So 8x minus 5 equals 8 times 7.25 minus 5. And if I type that all into my calculator, I end up with the final answer of 53 centimeters. And there is the answer for that one. Moving on to question 8, it says, here is a fair 4-section spinner. Stephen is going to spin the spinner 8 times. He says that I will get 2 of each letter. Give a reason why he could be wrong. Well, there's several reasons which he could be wrong, and any of these explanations for the 1 mark would be absolutely fine. So you could say something along the lines of that actual outcomes do not always match theoretical expectation. And you could also say something along the lines of that relative frequency only it becomes more effective when the number of trials is big, in which here we've spin it 8 times, so it's going to be really difficult to say, but the more times you spin it, the more likely you're going to get an even number of each of those particular letters. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine, but as long as your answer is hovering around any of the 2 things I've mentioned, then that would be absolutely fine. Question 8b says Charlotte spins the spinner 50 times. Her results are shown as follows. Work out the relative frequency of not spinning a vowel. So let's first of all see which one of these are vowels. So it's going to be not a vowel is B, C and D. So we need to do 13 plus 10 plus 7, which is 40, and over the total number, which is 50. So it's going to be actually, that should be 30, not 40. I don't know where I've got that from. There we go. And then that simplifies to give me 3/5, or I could write it as 0.6, depending on which you prefer. Then moving on to question 9, it says the polygon ABCDEF is divided into triangles as shown. Use the triangles to work out the sum of the interior angles of the polygon ABCDEF. And you must show you're working out. Well, each triangle is 180, so then the total sum of interior angles is going to be 4 times 180, which is 720 degrees. Moving on to question 10, it says the graph y equals a plus bx minus x squared is shown. And the first part is asking us to write down the coordinates of the turning point of the curve. Now the turning point is this point here. And what's that coordinate? Well, it's at 3:16. For part B, it says work out the value of A. Now the value of A is the y-intercept. And so going back to the graph, the y-intercept's at 7. So that means that A is going to equal 7. It then says circle the roots of A plus bx minus x squared equals 0. And the roots are basically where it crosses the x-axis. So it's going to be at -1 and 7, which is our first option. Then moving on to question 11, it says Fatima and 4 other women threw javelins in a competition. The distance in meters of the 4 other women are shown. The mean distance of all 5 women was 16.04 meters. Did Fatima throw the javelin the furthest? And you must show you're working out. Now again, with these yes/no questions, always do work it out and then tick yes or no. Try not to tick the box first and then try and manipulate an answer that justifies it. So let's just call, we don't know what Fatima's distance is, so we're just going to call that x, and then we'll just write her name just so we know that that's it. Now to work out the average of those 5, I need to add those numbers up. So I've got 15.2 plus 15.9 plus 16.1 plus 16.8 plus x. I divide that by 5, and that tells me that the mean, which is in this case is 16.04. Now if I simplify all of this by just simply working that out into my calculator, I get an answer of 64 plus x divided by 5 equals 16.04. I take the 5 over by multiplying by 5. I end up with 64 plus x equals 80.2. I then take away the 64, leaving me with that x equals 16.2 meters. So if that was Fatima's distance, is it the furthest? No, it isn't, because I've got 16.8, so the answer is going to be no. And you could say something along the lines of that someone through 16.8 meters, so she didn't throw the furthest. Something along those lines would be absolutely fine. Then moving on to question 12, it says the circle has the equation x squared plus y squared equals 25. Work out the length of its radius. Well, this value here is the value of the radius squared. So r squared equals 25. So that means that r is going to equal plus or minus 5. But because r is a length, it can only be a positive number. So the answer then is going to be 5. If you did write -5, you would lose a mark. So just be mindful of that. The next question 13, it says simplify fully, and we've got this expression inside a bracket. So for this, what I need to do is just raise all the terms in the bracket by 4. So it's going to be 2 to the power of 4. Now with brackets, we multiply the power, so that's going to be x to the power of 4 times 4, which is 16, and -3 times 4, which is -12. And then here, just remove the multiplication symbol, simplify 2 to the power of 4, which is 16. So the final answer is going to be 16x to the power of 16, y to the power of 12. Now you could write it, although not, I won't expect many people to do this, but you could write your answer like this, but that would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 13b, it says expand and simplify. So what we want to do here is use our loops, in which we get 6x squared plus, minus 21xy plus 12xy, and then minus 42y squared. Then simplifying these two things here, we get a final answer of 6x squared minus 9xy minus 42y squared. Moving on to question 14, it says B and C are different prime numbers between 15 and 30. A is an integer, and we've got this expression here. And the question is asking us to work out the possible set of values of A, B, and C. Well, for starters, let's just write down the primes between 15 and 30. And they are going to be 17, 19, 23, and 29. So then if I then work out what 4b is going to be, because b is going to be what 4b is going to be those multiplied by 4, so we get 68, 76, 92, and 116. Now if I then start playing with these numbers, so I've got 17, 19, 23 and 29. So if I just start by adding 29, and what I want to do is I want to check to make sure that gives me an answer of a square number. Now you should know and be able to recognize a square number up to 16. So if I do 68 plus 29 and just add 29 to each of these numbers, 97 is not a square number, so I can ignore that. So 76 plus 29 gives me 105. That's not a square. I don't need to do 92 times 23 because I've already used 23. So if I then do 29 rather, so I've got 92 plus 29 equals 121, so that does work. So if I then do 92 plus 29 equals 121, which is a square number, so that means that A is going to be the square root of 121, which is 11, B is going to be 29, and C is going to be 23, and C is going to be 29, and that should be fine to get you the 3 marks. Moving on to question 15, it says that an amount of money is invested for 5 years. It earned compound interest at 3.5% per year. After the 5 years, the total value of the investment was £11,876.86. Tony is wanting to work out the total interest earned, and we've got the interest equals for 5 years and we've got this calculation that says state what is wrong with Tony's method. Well, there's quite a lot wrong with this method, to be honest. So the first thing is we could have any, for 1 mark, you could have any of these statements. You could say that Tony multiplied when they should have divided, because we're told the final amount and we want to kind of work out the original amount, which again is not going to work. We also know that a 1.35 multiplier is 35% increase. I should say is a 35% increase, not 3.5%. So it should be 1.035, and also that it should be to the power of 5, not multiplied by 5. You could also say how they probably should have done it, which was 11. Well, they've not actually worked it out correctly. But in terms of the interest for the 5 years, it should have been 11. Don't know where that pointers come from. Let me just delete it all. So what they should have done is done 11876. That's definitely not what I've written. 876.86 divided by 1.035 to the power of 5, and then that would have given the original amount. And then taking this away, so 11876.86 minus the original amount, and that would have given us the interest. So any of those would be fine for the 1 mark. Now looking at it, it then says work out the total interest earned, which is basically what I've done. So I want to use this working out for B. So let's do just that. So we've got 11876.86 divided by 1.035 to the power of 5, and that gives me an answer of 10,000. So that there is our original amount, or starting amount. So the interest earned is going to be the final amount, which was 11,876.86 minus the original amount, giving us a final answer of 1876.86. Moving on to question 16, it says the diagram shows a lawn with a patio along one edge. 1 kilogram of grass covers a seed, covers 2.5 meter square of lawn. Each 1 kilogram of lawn seed costs £1.20. Work out the total cost of the grass seed needed to cover the lawn. So first things first, what we need to do is we need to work out the dimensions of this particular, or the perimeter of this particular shape, which is a trapezium. Now this is going to be 16. So what I need to do is work out what this length here is going to be, which I'm just going to call x. Now what I do spot is that this is going to be a right angle triangle. I can move that 32. So I've got this little triangle here where that's 32, this is x, and this is 40. Now hopefully you can spot I'm going to need to use Pythagoras. So I've got x squared equals 40 squared minus, because it's a small side that we're finding, 32 squared. So I get x squared equals 576. So x equals the square root of 576, which is 24. So what I then need to do is work out the area of the trapezium. So that's going to be the 2 parallel sides, which is 16 plus 24, which is 40. I then multiply that by the height, which is 32, and divide that by 2. And that gives me an answer of 896 meter squared. I then need to know how many 1 kilogram bags do I need. So in terms of the kgs needed, So that's going to be 896 divided by 2.5, and that comes up to a total of 358.4 kilograms. I then need to know how many bags do I need. So bags needed is going to be, and that's going to be 359. So then from this, what I then need to do is then work out the cost of the seeds. So I'm buying 359 bags at a price of £1.20. I type that into my calculator and I get an answer of £430.80. Moving on to question 17, it says in the USA in 2020, 25% of the population were 76 years old, 50% of the population were under 40, the interquartile range of ages was 51, and the oldest person was 98. Show the information on a box plot. So looking at this first one, we know that 25% were over 76, so this is our upper quartile. So our upper quartile is at 76, which is just there. The 50% mark, which is our median value, which is at 40. So this here is my median. And it says that the IQR is 51, so the IQR equals 51. So the lower quartile is the IQR, also the upper quartile, minus that interquartile range. So it's the upper quartile minus the IQR. So it's going to be 76 take away 51, which gives me an answer of 25. So my lower quartile is at 25, which is just there. So I can then draw my box, which I should be using a ruler. The highest value is 98, which is there. I can draw my box. Now for my lower value, I can put that anywhere between 0 and 24. So this could be absolutely anywhere, that line. So this point here could be between 0 and 24. The next question then says, 17b, it says it's predicted that in 2050 the age distribution in the USA will have a lower quartile of 30, a median value of 45 and an upper quartile of 70. Make two comments about the predicted change in the age distribution in the USA from 2020 to 2015. Now there's a couple of things you can write, but one thing you want to write for one of them is talking about the median. The other one is talking about the interquartile range. So something along the lines of that the average age increases, and you might want to state by how much, by 5 years from 2020 to 2050. So there you go. Now you then want to comment on the spread. So the IQR for 2050 is going to be, so the IQR is going to be 40. So I'm comparing an IQR of 40 and an IQR of 51. So for a comment here, you could say something along the lines of that ages were less spread. You could say by 11 years from 2020 to 2050. Something along those lines would have been absolutely fine. You could also say something along the lines of the ages were more consistent and more similar, and so people were living for a similar age. You could also say for the first comment that people were living longer. So a statement that's related to the median, a statement that's related to the spread of data would be fine to get you those 2 marks. Moving on to question 18, it says work out the value of x. So here we've got a non-right angled triangle, so it's going to be either using cosine or the sine rule. We've got 2 angles and 2 sides, so we're going to be using the sine rule. So labelling this up, let's label our first angle A and the opposite angle A. Then we've got B and we've got little b. So then substituting those into the sine rule, we get x over sine 55 equals 14 over sine 30. Doing a bit of cross multiplying, I get x sine 30 equals 14 sine 55. So then x equals 14 sine 55 divided by sine 30. And I type that all into my calculator and I get an answer of 22.9. Don't know why I've put degrees there because it's the length, so it should be in centimeters, and that's to 1 decimal place. Moving on to question 19, it says that the ratio of the number of adults to junior members at a gym is 7 to 6. 14 more juniors join the gym. The ratio of the number of adults to juniors at the gym is now 7 to 8. Work out the total number of people in the gym. So looking at this, if we compare the difference, so we know that the difference is 6 to 7. So that means that there's 2 parts equals 14 people. So that means then that 7, one part is going to equal 7. So then here we've got seniors, or adults it says, not seniors. So we've got adults, which is 7 parts, is going to be 7 times 7, which is 49. The juniors, which is 8 parts, which is going to be 8 times 7. And let me just make sure that looks like a times, not a plus. And we get 56. And so the total number of people at the gym is going to be those 2 numbers added together, which gives me an answer of 105. Moving on to question 20, it says 3x squared minus 18x plus c, and then here we've got our expansion. So this is comparing coefficients. Now there's a couple of ways in which you could do this. You can expand the brackets, then compare, or you could factorize the left-hand side to make it look like the right-hand side. Now, depending on your ability, I'm going to probably go on a limb and say that expanding this side is going to be the easiest. So I've got a lots of x squared minus, it's going to be 2bx minus b squared minus 4b. And so looking at this, does this make this any easier? Well, if I expand the brackets out, I get ax squared plus, no, minus two abx minus ab squared minus 4ab. Now, in terms of comparing the coefficients, I've got, so the x squared, well, I've got 3 on this side and I've got a on this side, so a equals 3. Then comparing the x coefficients, I'll do that in a different colour. I've got minus 18 on the left hand side, and things with an x are going to be minus 2ab. I know what a is because a is 3, so that's going to be minus 18. Minus 2 times 3 is minus 6, so b equals 3. And then comparing the constant, on the left hand side I've got c, and on the right hand side I've got ab squared minus 4ab, in which I know that a is 3, b is 3, so I've got c equals 3 times 9 minus 4 times 3, so that's 27 minus 12, so c equals 15, and so the answer then is 15. Now another way of doing it is to factorize this left hand side, in which if I take a 3 out, I end up with x squared minus 6x plus c over 3. Then if I use completing the square, I get x, let's put that in brackets, minus 3 squared plus c over 3 minus 9. Then I multiply everything by 3, in which I get 3x minus 3 squared. C over 3 times 3 is just c, and 9 times 3 is 27. So from this, what I can then spot is that this is going to be my a value. This is going to be my b value. And c, well, c is going to be, well, all of this is equal to the coefficient that I'm going to end up here, which is going to be ab squared minus 4ab. And so substituting those ab values in, I could get 15 as well. So moving on to question 22, it says for all values of x, f of x equals 2x squared plus 3, g of x equals x plus 4. And question 22a says show that fg of x equals 2x squared plus 16x plus 35. Now for fg of x, what I want to do is I want to substitute g of x into x in f of x. So here f of x is two lots of, now instead of writing x, I'm going to write all of this instead. So I'm going to write 2x plus 4 squared plus 3. So again, all I've done is just replace that x with this and I get this. Next thing we then need to do is then simplify. Now recognize this is a double bracket question, so it's going to be x squared plus, and it's going to be 8x plus 16 plus 3. Not sure where that's come from. I'll just quickly show you here, and that's going to be x squared plus 8x plus 16. And then we simplify this further, so I get 2x squared plus 16x plus 32 plus 3, giving me a final answer of 2x squared plus 16x plus 35, which is what they wanted me to show. It then says solve f of x equals g f of x. Well, f of x squared, that's part A. So that's going to be 2x squared plus 16x plus 35 equals, now for this, I need to swap x in g of x with this. So rather than writing x plus 4, I'm going to write 2x squared plus 3 plus 4. Then simplifying that further, let me just scroll down a little bit. So we get 2x squared plus 16x plus 35 equals 2x squared plus 3 plus 4. Now, if we just, let me just quickly write that out, simplifying it, plus 7. Then from this, I can take away the 2x squared, so minus 2x squared, minus 2x squared, and I end up with 16x plus 35 equals 7. 16x equals minus 28, and x equals minus 28 over 16, which simplifies and gives me as a decimal of minus 1.75. And we could simplify dividing both numbers by 4, so we get minus 7 over 4, and either of those would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 23, it says a formula connecting density, mass and volume is D equals m over v. It says D equals 200 grams per cubic meter to two significant figures, and V equals 7.15 meter cubed to three significant figures. Work out the upper bounds and lower bounds of m. So what I need to do first is rearrange this formula to make m the subject. So I've got that D equals m over v. So m equals d times v. Now for the lower bound, because I'm multiplying, I want the smallest, I want a small d times a small v. So for this, that's going to be, now working these out in terms of the upper and lower bounds, that's going to be 100, now this has been rounded to nearest 10, so that's going to be 195 to 205. This has been rounded up to nearest hundredth, so that's going to be 7.145 and 7.155. So small d is 195 and small v is 7.145, and that gives me an answer of 1393.275. The upper bound is going to be large d times large v, and that's going to be 205 times 7.155, which gives me an answer of 1466.775. Now the question says give your answer to nearest integer, so I need to round those numbers up. So the lower bound is going to be 1393 and the upper bound is going to be 1467, and there is my final answer. We then move on to question 24. It says A, B, C, D are points on a circle. Tick whether each statement is true or false. So let's first of all work with this one. So it says AC is the diameter. We need to give our answer. So if AC is the diameter, then the opposite angle, which is ABC, should equal 90 degrees. So let's go about working what that angle is going to be. Well, looking at this, I know that this angle here is going to be 40. Why? Because it's a bow. I know that this angle here and this angle here are going to be the same because it's an isosceles triangle. So that's going to be 180 minus 50 divided by 2. And that gives me an answer of 65. So going back to this particular statement here, so as ABC is equal to 65 plus 40, which is 105. So this is not equal to 90. So AC is not the diameter. So the answer is false. The next question then says angle ADC is 75. So let's have a look at what angle ADC is. So ADC, so it's this angle here we need to find. So if I just write B here, so this opposite angles in a cyclic quadrilateral, so opposite angles in a cyclic quadrilateral add up to 180. So here what we've got is 180 minus 105 equals 75. So that there is true. Then we need to write down our reason, and this is my reason for B. So then moving on to C, it says CDE is 40 degrees. Let's just quickly just write that down. So CDE. So CDE is this angle here. And this is, let me just label that as part C. Well, that's not going to come up. Let's label that as part C. Now, looking at the alternate segment theorem and looking at this triangle here, that C is going to equal 40 degrees, and the reason for that is because the alternate segment theorem. So for C, it is 40 degrees, and again the reason for that is because of the alternate segment theorem. Then moving on to question 25, our last question, it says that the volume of the pyramid is 1/3 times the area base times the perpendicular height. It says VABCD is a rectangular square base pyramid with a volume of 640. And the question is asking us to work out the angle between VC and the base. So this is the angle that I am wanting to work out. Now, in order to work that angle out, I need to know what the perpendicular height is. I need to know what X to C is. Now, there is no correct order in which you can work that out, but you'll end up doing both either way. So looking at X to C, so let's just have that as a little subheading. So finding X to C. Now, if I just turn this into a triangle, ABC. So I've got A to C to B. This is 16, that's 10, and this is what we're going to call X. So we can use Pythagoras to work this out. Now, I shouldn't really be calling it X because I don't want to get confused with the center, which I've called as X. So let's just call this AC. So AC squared equals 16 squared plus 10 squared. So that equals 256 plus 100. So AC squared equals 356. And so AC equals the square root of 356, which therefore means that XC is half the size. So XC is going to be 356 square rooted divided by 2. And that gives me an answer of root 89. So let me just put that in a box. So then Let's go back to the diagram, just label that as root 89. Then we need to work out the perpendicular height. Now for this I'm going to use this formula, and that it says that the volume is 640. So we know that it's a third times the base area, which is 16 times 10, multiplied by h, and that all should equal 640. So then I've got a third times 160 times h equals 640. So h equals 640 divided by a third times 160. Now you might have written that in a completely different way, but as long as you get the right value of h, it's all good. So 640 divided by 160 divided by 3, and I get an answer of 12. So then looking at this triangle, which I'm going to draw rather poorly, this is the angle that I need to find, which is x. I know the height now is 12, and x to c is root 89. So then using SOHCAHTOA trig, I've got O and A, so I've got to use tan. So tan x equals 12 over root 89. So x equals the inverse of tan of 12 over root 89. So x gives me a final answer of 51.8 degrees, and that's been rounded to 1 decimal place. And that concludes the end of this paper.